Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be looking at
Good.
a sermon that someone sent us
Mm-hmm.
titled, Be Transformed by the Renewing of Your Mind. And
Interesting.
I found it really fascinating because right off the bat, it kind of connects biblical principles
Right.
with something called the science of formal axiology.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's this interesting kind of blend of
Yeah.
spirituality and science, and it had me hooked from the beginning.
So we're talking about the idea that aligning our values
Exactly.
with God's truth can actually lead to real change,
Yeah.
both personally and even societally.
Yeah. Can it actually lead to
Oh,
real change
right.
for ourselves and for society?
Big question.
That's what we're here to explore. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I think, one of the things that really struck me was
Yeah.
how the sermon challenges us to think about if our values are really our own.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. That's
if we've just been influenced by kind of the world around us.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
I think that's something all of us probably
Yeah.
wrestle with.
Yeah. And it talks about,
Mm-hmm.
how the world often pushes us towards values like power and wealth,
Oh, yeah.
even though deep down,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us feel like those things don't really lead to lasting happiness.
I think so.
It even gives some specific examples like choosing power over humility or chasing material wealth
Yeah.
instead of spiritual richness.
Those are good examples.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever felt that kind of pull, like that pressure to prioritize those things that maybe don't really resonate with you?
Oh, yeah. All the time. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it's just part of the human experience.
Absolutely. And I think that's where this whole idea of renewing our minds comes in.
Oh, yeah.
So the sermon emphasizes that we have the power to actually shift our thinking,
Right.
reevaluate our priorities and actually align them with a deeper sense of purpose.
I love that renewing our minds. It reminds me a lot of what we hear in psychology these days about like the power of mindset,
Totally. Yeah. Right.
like in cognitive behavioral therapy, where the focus is on changing those negative thought patterns
Yeah.
to improve our mental and emotional well-being.
That's a great connection. And, the sermon even offers some concrete suggestions for how to go about this mind renewal, like
Okay.
immersing ourselves in scripture, spending time in prayer, and really looking at our values through a more spiritual lens.
Okay, so this is where Dr. Robert S. Hartman
Okay.
and his work on formal axiology kind of enters the picture, right?
Right.
I have to admit, when I first read that this guy was both a philosopher and a mathematician,
Wow.
I was pretty intrigued.
Yeah. How do you even connect those two fields?
Right.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and so how did he even do that?
Well, Hartman believed that values weren't just subjective opinions or feelings.
Oh.
He saw them as objective truths that could be understood and even measured scientifically.
Wow.
And that's what led him to develop formal axiology,
Okay.
which is a whole system for categorizing and analyzing values.
So instead of just saying, oh, I value kindness,
Right.
Hartman's work gives us a way to really break down what that means and how it fits into a larger framework.
Precisely. He identified three main categories of values: extrinsic, and systemic.
Right.
And understanding these categories can help us to see where our own values might be out of alignment.
Okay, I am definitely ready to unpack these categories.
All right.
What exactly do they mean and how do they relate to each other?
Let's start with intrinsic values.
Okay.
These are the values that focus on people and relationships.
Mm.
Think of things like love, compassion, empathy, family, and community.
Okay.
They're the values that connect us to something bigger than ourselves and nourish our souls.
So those are the things that really matter at the end of the day.
You could say that.
The things that make life truly meaningful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now contrast that with extrinsic values.
Okay.
These are more about tasks, achievements, and outcomes.
Mhm.
Things like success, efficiency, wealth, status, they're important,
Yeah.
but perhaps not as fundamentally fulfilling as intrinsic values.
Okay, I'm starting to see the distinction. So it's not that extrinsic values are bad,
Right.
but they shouldn't necessarily be our top priority.
Exactly. And then we have the third category, systemic values.
Okay.
These values emphasize order, structure, and consistency.
Uh-huh.
So think logic, rules, data systems, the things that help us make sense of the world and create a framework for our lives.
So if intrinsic values are about our hearts
Okay.
and extrinsic values are about our goals,
Yeah.
systemic values are about how we organize and understand everything.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The sermon suggests that aligning our values with God's truth means prioritizing intrinsic values above all else.
Okay.
It's about putting love, compassion, and connection at the forefront of our lives and letting those values guide our decisions.
I'm starting to see how Hartman's work ties into all of this.
Yeah.
It gives us a way to analyze our values and see if they're truly reflecting that focus on intrinsic values. It's like holding up a mirror to our hearts, isn't it?
That's a beautiful analogy, and that's where the concept of the Hartman Value Profile, or HVP, comes into play.
Ah, yes. The sermon mentioned the HVP as a tool that can help us understand our values and see where we might be out of alignment.
Right.
It even mentioned an organization called Value Builders International that uses the HVP to facilitate personal and organizational transformation.
Wow.
Tell me more about that. How does it work?
Well, the HVP is essentially a questionnaire that helps you assess your personal values based on Hartman's 3 categories.
Okay.
It can reveal those blind spots, the areas where we might be unconsciously prioritizing values that aren't truly serving us.
So it's not just about reading a sermon and saying, okay, I need to be more loving. It's about having a concrete tool to help us see where our values might be out of whack
Yes,
and then figure out how to shift them.
exactly. And that's where Value Builders International comes in.
Okay.
They take the insights from the HVP and use them to develop coaching programs and strategies for individuals and organizations. It's like taking that self-awareness and turning it into a roadmap for positive change.
I love it, a roadmap for positive change. And strikes me is that this whole concept seems relevant even if someone doesn't necessarily subscribe to the same religious beliefs as the sermon.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to live fulfilling lives, and maybe understanding our values and aligning them with what truly matters
Right.
is a key part of that journey.
I absolutely agree. Whether we frame it in a spiritual context or not,
Mm-hmm.
the underlying principles resonate with something deep within us.
Yeah.
We all have values that drive our choices, and when those values are out of alignment, we feel it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about the sermon's call to renew our minds,
Yes.
explored Hartman's fascinating work on formal axiology,
Uh-huh.
and even touched upon this powerful tool, the HVP.
Right.
But I'm curious to dig a little deeper into how all of this plays out in real life.
Okay.
How can we actually start to apply these concepts and make meaningful changes in our lives?
That's a great question, and I think that's where things start to get really exciting.
Right.
Let's dive into that next. So you want to know how to actually put all of this into practice.
Yeah, like how do we really make this happen in our lives?
Well, it's helpful to remember that aligning our values isn't a one-time event.
Right.
It's an ongoing process of self-discovery and adjustment.
It's like tending a garden.
Yeah,
It needs constant attention and care.
exactly.
But where do we even begin?
Well,
Does the sermon give us any clues?
yeah, while the sermon itself doesn't get super specific, it does emphasize that transformation rarely happens in isolation.
Okay.
It encourages us to connect with others who can guide and support us on our journey.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and it even highlights Value Builders International as a resource for those seeking deeper guidance.
Yeah, and even if you're not ready to work with an organization like that,
Right.
you can still start by taking some small steps on your own right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Just reflecting on those 3 value categories we discussed can be incredibly illuminating.
Okay.
Think about where you're spending your time and energy.
Mm.
What activities or commitments take up most of your day?
Yeah.
Do those align with the values you hold most dear? Those intrinsic values of connection and compassion.
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm already feeling a little self-conscious.
It's not about judgment, though.
Okay.
It's about awareness.
Right.
Maybe you're spending a lot of time on work-related tasks driven by those extrinsic values of achievement and success.
Mm-hmm.
That's not inherently bad.
Right.
But if you find yourself feeling drained or disconnected from the people you love, it could be a sign that those extrinsic values are overshadowing your intrinsic ones.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Mhm.
So how do we begin to shift that balance?
Well, one powerful technique the sermon touches on is being intentional about what we feed our minds.
Okay.
Think about the books you read, the
Yeah.
shows you watch, the
Yeah.
people you surround yourself with.
The music you listen to.
Exactly. Are they nourishing your soul and aligning with the values you want to embody?
Right.
Or are they subtly reinforcing priorities that might not be serving you?
It's almost like curating your own mental diet,
Exactly.
choosing to focus on things that uplift and inspire you,
Yeah,
rather than things that leave you feeling empty or stressed.
precisely. And this is where things can get really exciting.
Oh.
Imagine intentionally surrounding yourself with people who embody those intrinsic values, people who are genuinely compassionate and supportive.
Right.
or seeking out books and podcasts that explore topics that resonate with your deeper sense of purpose.
Yeah.
These small choices can have a ripple effect, gradually shifting your mindset and shaping your reality.
This is all making me think about the HVP.
Yeah.
I remember you mentioned that Value Builders International uses it to develop personalized coaching programs.
Right.
How exactly does that work?
Well, think of the HVP as a starting point for deeper conversation. It can help you identify those potential blind spots,
Right.
the areas where your actions might not be fully aligned with your stated values.
Okay.
And from there, a skilled coach can help you explore those discrepancies, understand the underlying reasons behind them,
Mhm.
and develop strategies for bringing your life into greater alignment.
So it's not just about taking a test and getting a score.
Right.
It's about using that information as a springboard for self-discovery and growth.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting is how Value Builders International works with organizations as well as
Oh,
individuals.
wow.
Imagine a company taking the time to assess its collective values
Hmm.
and then making intentional changes to its culture,
Yeah.
policies, or even its physical workspace to better reflect those values.
Hmm. Applying this kind of framework to an entire organization sounds incredibly complex.
It can be.
How would that even work in practice? Wouldn't it be challenging to get everyone on board with a shared set of values?
It certainly has its challenges,
Yeah.
but that's where the power of dialogue and shared understanding comes in.
Okay.
Value Builders International facilitates workshops and team building activities to help organizations identify their core values and create a shared vision for the future.
Okay.
It's about empowering everyone to feel like they're a part of something meaningful, something
Yeah.
that aligns with their own personal values.
I could see how that could be really transformative, not just for the organization itself,
Right.
but for the individuals within it. Imagine feeling like your work is truly contributing to something you believe in.
Absolutely.
What a powerful motivator that would be.
And it goes beyond motivation.
Yeah.
It can impact everything from employee satisfaction and productivity to customer relationships and brand reputation.
Wow.
When an organization's actions are aligned with its values, it creates a sense of authenticity and integrity that resonates with everyone it touches.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
You know, what strikes me about all of this is that it's not just about feeling good or being happy.
Mhm.
It's about aligning our actions with a deeper sense of purpose,
Right.
with what the sermon calls God's truth.
Yeah.
But how do we even begin to understand that concept if we're not coming from a religious perspective?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And I think it gets to the heart of what makes this whole exploration so fascinating.
Okay.
The concept of God's truth can be interpreted in many ways, even outside of a specific religious context.
Yeah.
It could be about tapping into that universal longing for connection, meaning, and purpose that seems to reside within us all.
That's so true, whether we call it God's truth, inner wisdom, or our highest selves.
Exactly.
It's about aligning with something bigger than our own individual desires.
Yes.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness and acting in ways that benefit not just ourselves, but the world around us.
Exactly. And I think that's a beautiful and powerful message that resonates with people from all walks of life,
Mm.
whether we're seeking spiritual transformation, personal growth, or simply a more fulfilling and meaningful existence. This idea of aligning our values with something greater than ourselves holds immense potential.
This has been such an insightful conversation.
It has.
We've gone from exploring the sermon's call to renew our minds, to delving into Hartman's groundbreaking work, and even imagining how these concepts can be applied in our personal and professional lives.
Absolutely.
But I'm eager to hear your thoughts on what we can leave our listener with today.
Okay.
What's one final thought-provoking question that might spark further reflection and perhaps even inspire some action?
Well, I think a good question to leave our listener with today might be,
Okay.
what if you took a moment to consider
Hmm?
if you could pinpoint one value
Right.
that feels maybe a bit out of sync in your life right now?
Okay.
What would that be?
Oh, that's a good one.
And what's one small step, even a tiny one that you could take today to bring it back into balance?
That's such a great question to ponder. It really invites us to look inward and get honest with ourselves.
And I want to emphasize it doesn't have to be some grand gesture or a complete life overhaul.
Right.
Sometimes the most profound shifts come from those small, consistent actions.
So true. Maybe it's finally setting aside that hour for quality time with your loved ones, even if it means saying no to something else.
Absolutely.
Or perhaps it's choosing to engage in a conversation with someone who holds different views than you,
Right.
approaching it with genuine curiosity and a desire to understand rather than judge.
I love those examples, and it could even be something as simple as pausing before you react in a stressful situation,
Okay.
taking a few deep breaths,
Yeah.
and asking yourself, what would a response rooted in love and compassion look like right now?
Mm-hmm.
These seemingly small choices can have a ripple effect, gradually shifting our patterns and aligning us more closely with the values we want to embody.
You know what I find so inspiring about this whole deep dive is the sense of hope that it offers.
I agree.
It reminds us that we're not stuck with our current values or habits. We have the power to choose differently, to grow, to become more aligned with who we truly want to be.
I love that, and that's a message worth holding on to.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that transformation is an ongoing journey,
Mhm.
and even small steps taken with intention can lead to profound shifts over time.
It's been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation.
It really has.
I know I'm walking away with a renewed sense of purpose and a desire to really examine my own values
Yeah.
and see where I might need to make some adjustments.
Me too. And I hope our listener feels empowered to embark on their own journey of self-discovery and value alignment.
Yeah,
It's a journey that can lead to a more fulfilling, meaningful, and connected life, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us.
that's a beautiful sentiment to end on.
Thank you.
And until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep seeking those nuggets of wisdom that will help you live a more authentic and aligned life.
Absolutely.